Enemy AI is important for making your games more interesting, exciting, and challenging. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to make it. Let's get right into it. So let's get started with our first step. So our first step is to first of all make a player, because we need to make a player before we can even make any AI, because we need something for the AI to interact with in the first place. And what I mean by AI, I don't mean by advanced chat GPT type AI. I mean enemy AI, like enemies that move back and forth, enemies that try to shoot you, enemies that do types of things like that. I'm going to be showing you the foundations so you can make several different types of AI even without this tutorial. So let's get started. So I'm going to add an object. I'm going to have it as a sprite, and I'm going to call it the player object. And this object, I'm just going to use just a blank red sprite. I'm going to go into like my pictures, and I'm going to use a blank red sprite. Let me find this real fast. And right here, and I'm going to just use this blank red sprite. Now I'm going to add a behavior to it in the behaviors tab as well. And this behavior is going to be the platform behavior, because I'm going to be showing you how to make AI specifically for platformers, but all of what I'm teaching you can also work for non-platformers as well. So this is not only limited to platformers. Now I'm going to put a platform object character. I'm going to leave everything as default since we don't want to really change that. I'm going to drag it onto the screen, and now I'm going to add another object, and it's also going to be a sprite, and this is going to be called the ground, because we need something for the player to stand on. Add an animation, add a sprite, and have a black cube. And this is what it's going to be, and I'm just going to have this. I forgot to put the behavior on it. Go to the behaviors tab, add behavior, and make sure it's that platform behavior, or else that your platform, your player will fall through the platform. Now it's a platform behavior, and I'm going to drag it out. And just to make sure that this works, I'm going to preview the game. And as you can see, the player, we can move around, we can jump around, and I don't fall through the floor. So everything is going as planned there. Now let's get actually into the AI. Now first, I'm going to teach you how to make the most basic form of AI. This can be found in platforms, RPGs, basically almost any type of game. And this is AI that goes back and forth. It goes to one side, and then it goes to the other side. It goes to one side, goes to the other side. This is very simple, and every game developer should know this. So I'm going to create a new object, and it's going to be called sprite, and I'm going to be call this just basic enemy. I'm going to call it B enemy because we don't really want a long name. B enemy, and I'm going to add an animation, and for this, I'm going to go to choose a file from asset store. I'm going to go to the 16 by 16 pixel art RPG pack, and this might seem a little bit odd, but I'm just going to pick this gem right here. It's just a gem. I know that normally this is not enemy, but just know that you can use any sprite for this. Now, how do you go back and forth? Now, logically, you would want to add a force to the player for a certain amount of time, and then add a force to the opposite direction for another amount of time. And normally this can work and will work. But in Gdevelop, there's an extension that makes this extremely easy and less complicated. So we always want to, if we can do it easily, we definitely want to do it easily. So if you want to get this, go to this project manager, go to the project manager, go to extensions, and then search up back and forth. Just put back, and then it says timed back and forth movement. They also have one for animated back and forth movement if you want your object to flip. Just know that these are basically the same thing. I'm going to install this in the project, and now since we have it installed, make sure it's right there, and go to B enemy, double click into it, and add a behavior to it. And now if we scroll down, you'll see at the bottom we have time back and forth movement. And as you can see, there's a few parameters here. We have moving distance. This is in pixels. And remember, pixels are really, really small. They're talking about pixels on like the screen. So we don't want the pixels, the distance that moves, to be really small unless you're aiming for that. But the moving speed also in pixels per second. And then we have the maximum moving time. And I'm going to keep everything default just so you can see how this looks. I'm going to drag the enemy onto screen. I'm going to size it up a little bit. And this is a pretty good size right here. And I'm going to scroll it down to make it look like it's touching the floor. And as you can see, it goes back, forth. It goes back and forth. Now, there is one limitation with this extension. It always starts off going left in this extension, which can be kind of annoying. Not left. It always starts off going right. But if you want to change that, you have to physically program it yourself, which I'm going to show you how to do a little bit later. But normally, this is all you need for your enemy bad guy. But one thing, of course, is when we go to this enemy AI, we don't really die from it. We can just go through it. And normally you would want to make a hurt system in your game, but in this case, I'm just going to delete the object. So we're going to go to the events, add an event, add condition, and when player is in collision, gotta type in collision. When it's in collision with enemy, click OK, and then add an action. We want to go to player and then type in delete. So basically, when we touch the object now it'll delete the player, basically essentially killing us and ending the game. Of course, you can make a health system, but as you can see, now we're deleted. Now that's the most basic type of AI. How about if we want to make an AI that shoots the player when it's at a certain distance? You can see this in a lot of games, RPGs too, but mainly platforms, especially when you have shooter games. There's enemies that try to shoot you when you're in a certain distance. How do you make this? Now, this is also quite simple, but first we want to download an extension for this as well. Now, of course, you can do all of this without extensions, but I'm showing you how to do it with extensions because it makes it much easier and less tedious. So I'm going to type in bullet. And it's the fire bullet extension. This is super useful for shooting any type of objects without all the complications. I'm going to install this in the project. And now we have it in the project. I'm going to go to the enemy. And just so it's not annoying, I'm going to delete this behavior for now. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to add in the behavior, scroll down, and put fire bullets. Now, there's a lot of parameters in here like ammo, angle variance, bullet speed variance, all of this stuff. But the only thing for this tutorial we need to worry about right now is firing cooldown. How often do you want the enemy to be able to shoot bullets? In this case, I want to have like 1.5 seconds of cooldown. We don't want it shooting too fast because that would make the enemy really overpowered. Now I'm going to hit apply, and right now the enemy can't do anything. We have to trigger an event that makes the enemy shoot. Now, what do we want to do? We want it to be a distance event. So I'm going to go add a new condition. Make sure it's this new one. And I'm going to put player. Then I'm going to type in distance. Distance between two objects. And the second object is the enemy. And the distance we want to choose, this distance I'm quite sure is in pixels because that's what most time Gdevelop measures it by. But I'm going to put 300 here. And basically it detects if the player is in 300 pixels within the enemy. Now what do we want to do? We want the enemy to shoot at the player. So what we want the enemy to do, I'm going to click into the enemy, and we want to put fire bullets towards an angle. Now you could do fire bullets towards a position, and that could be the player. But if you want to keep it like a straightforward bullet, you want to do fire bullets towards an angle. But before we do this, I forgot one thing. We have to have a bullet object as well. So I'm going to go into sprites, add a new sprite, and put bullet. Add an animation, add a sprite. I don't have a sprite for this. Let me go to the asset store. And I'm just going to type in all assets, and then I'm going to type in bullet because Gdevelop has some useful assets for that. And I'm going to just choose this little red bullet right here. This seems like a good color for it. And make sure when you're looking at it, you like the size. Because bullets, they normally spawn, not normally, they always spawn unless said otherwise by their default size. And this is the default size that the bullets start in. 20 by 19. And this is a pretty good size, it matches. Now I'm going to delete this object. And now we're going to go back into our event, add action, go to enemy, and put fire bullets towards an angle. Now, this is, let me see, the angle that we want to do, the exposition of where to create the bullet. Let's get this started. So where do we want to create the bullet? We want to create the bullet at the center of the enemy. So the enemy, its name is B enemy. Then we put dot, point X. Now, if you didn't know already, Gdevelop has a point on each object, and it normally starts off as they have a center point and they have an origin point. And in this case, we want to use the center point. And we're going to put in parentheses, not parentheses, in quotes, center. That's what it's named by default. You can rename it if you like, but this was named by default. I'm going to copy and paste this, and for the Y position of where we want to create the bullet, I'm going to put everything the same except for point X. This is very important. Change this to point Y, and then it'll spawn at the Y position. And then I'm going to put the bullet object, this the bullet. And then how about the angle? The angle is, we want to set it at the angle of 180, and that'll make it face to the left. Now, of course, you can make it go towards the player like that. This is much more flexible, but I'm just showing you how it works. And the speed we want to move at is 300. Let's see 300. Let's see how this looks. Now, when I run the game, right now it's not doing anything because I'm not near it. So let's see what happens when I go near it. I'm going to slowly inch towards it. And there it goes. It shoots it from the center. And the center object from here is a little bit to the side. Sometimes you have to change it if you want to be more accurate. But as you see, it's working just fine. But the bullets don't kill us. And once again, we want to make, if the player is in collision with a bullet, we want to delete the player. I'm going to copy this and paste it in here. And now if I touch the bullet, the player will also be deleted. Now, I know this is very basic and simple stuff, but we're not done yet. I want to show you the real, true foundation of how to make any type of AI you want. And it's all based on one thing: timers. It's all about timers. How do you make complex AI? How do you make boss fights? It's all about timing events. That's all that is about. And this is, frankly, very easy in Gdevelop. Now, I'm going to create a new enemy. And it's going to be called C enemy, standing for complex enemy. You can name this whatever you want. Of course, just make sure to reference it in the code. Add an animation, and I'm also going to change this to a different type of gem. Pixel art RPG items. Let me delete the bullet. And I'm just going to pick this emerald gem right here, this emerald. And I'm going to delete you out of the scene. And I'm going to drag this in here. And I'm going to size it up. Now, what do we want to do with this? Now, what I'm going to show you how to do is time events. I'm going to make this player, not this player, this enemy, is going to go to the left first, is going to shoot at the player, and then is going to go back to the right, and is going to repeat that forever. And that is the foundation of how you make things like boss fights and everything. That's why I'm showing you this, so you can make any type of AI you want. Now, let's go into the enemy, and we have to add the behavior of the bullets. So I'm going to put fire bullets. I'm going to change the firing cooldown to basically 1 second. It doesn't really matter because it'll only be shooting once anyway. But the firing cooldown will be 1 second. Now, how do we time events? Now we need a variable in order to control what phase it goes into, because it's going to be switching from phase to phase with a timer controlling that. And now I'm going to go into the C enemy, go into object variables, add a variable. And this variable is best to make it a number, not a boolean, because booleans can only have two values, true or false. Numbers can have practically infinite amount of values. So I'm going to name this control, because this is the control variable that controls the phases. And the default one is going to be 0. It's going to start as 0. That's where it starts. Now, what do we want to do now? I'm going to add a new event, and I'm going to add a condition. So I'm going to go into the enemy object, C enemy, not B enemy, and I'm going to go into object variable. You can just type in variable here, number variable, and click control. Now, basically what we're saying, if control equals 0. So I'm going to set this is equal to 0. If control equals 0, we want to do something. Now, question is, what do we want to do? So since we want to go to the left first, we want to subtract the X position for each frame that is in this mode. So I'm going to go to C enemy, X position, type in X position, and instead of putting equal, I'm going to put subtract, and then put 3. And let's see how this looks in the game. It should be moving to the left now. As you see, it keeps moving to the left, but since we haven't controlled it, it keeps moving to the left forever. And of course, it can't kill us yet. We're going to program that later. Now, what do we want to do next? We have to transition it into the next phase of it shooting. The phase is where it shoots. So I want to wait 2 seconds. I'm going to wait 2 seconds before it switches. Instead of using a whole like really big timer, I'm going to go into actions, other actions, go into timers and time, and wait X seconds. This is really useful. And put 2 seconds. You can put this as long as you want, but in this case 2 seconds. And if we want to switch to the next phase, remember we have the control variable. So I'm going to switch this variable to 1. And I'm going to go into this enemy. Make sure you click to the enemy. Type in variable. Change number variable. change control equal to 1. And let's see what happens. Now it should move to the left for 2 seconds and then stop. It stopped forever. Of course, we don't want it to stop forever. We want it to keep repeating in a loop. So what do we want to do next? We have to set a condition for when the control equals 1. So I'm going to copy and paste this. So I'm going to change only one thing on right now in the condition, and I'm going to change it to if control is equal to 1. And since we want it to be still, we don't want it to move during this. So we're going to remove the subtract x position by 3, and we're going to add a new event, and it's going to shoot a bullet. So I'm going to go to see enemy, fire bullet towards an angle, and I'm going to put in the same thing I put in earlier, but for see enemy. So see enemy, where do we want to create the bullet? See enemy dot point x, and we're going to put center because it has a center point. Copy this, and I'm going to paste it, and instead of point x, I'm going to put point y. And the bullet object, we're going to use that same bullet, and the angle of the bullet, 180. If you want it to go to the right, it will be by default 0 if you want it to go to the right, but for the left is 180. And speed of the bullet, once again, 300 is a pretty good speed. And I'm going to put this at the very top of the condition. And then I want to wait 1 second. Wait 1 second, because we don't want to freeze. And then switch to another phase of it going right, which will be when control equals 2. So now I'm going to preview the scene and see what happens. It's going to do this. It's going to shoot at me. And it killed the player. And now it stops. So we have one more thing for it to do. We want to go left and then repeat the cycle. So I'm going to now copy this one more time. Copy. Paste. And I'm going to change if control variable of see enemy equals 2 now. If it equals 2, what do we want to do? We don't want to fire a bullet. I'm going to copy this X position action, copy and paste it in here. Copy and paste. And I'm going to, instead of subtracting 3 pixels every frame, I'm going to add 3 pixels every frame because that'll make it go to the right. I'm going to put this to the top, and we want to wait 2 seconds so it can keep the distance very consistent. And then instead of changing control variable to 3, we want to repeat the cycle. So guess what? We change the control variable back to 0. And that'll repeat the cycle. As you can see, if we look at this logically, it changes from phase 0 to phase 1 to change phase 2 and back to 0. And guess what? 0 is the one that starts the loop. So as you can see, this will loop on forever and forever and forever until the enemy is deleted. So let's preview this now. It's going to move to the left, shoot at me, move to the right. It's going to move to the left. It's going to shoot at me again, move to the right. That's what it does. And it's a little bit off sync here. I think I forgot one of these things I want to wait a little bit. But it's a little bit off sync because of the way I programmed it, because it only waits 1 second after shooting that bullet. But after that, it's good. It's all good from there. So that is how you make advanced AI. And I know you're wondering, how about if you want to make AI that kind of like they jump around, they have gravity? And I'm going to show you the foundation of it right here. I'm going to tell you in words. Now, I'm going to show you this sprite. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you the player object. That's the last thing I'm going to just say before we leave. Behaviors. And look at this right here. This is a platformer object. So how could we control this? I know you normally use the player to control this, but you don't need the player to control this. All you have to do is deactivate default controls and use simulate key events. What do I mean by that? Simulate key events. I'm going to show you this. Add new event. And let's say if space is pressed. I'm just going to put always and just show you the action for it. I'm going to go into other. I'm going to go into, let me see, not other. I'm going to go into player. And as you can see, we have simulate these presses. We have simulate these key presses. And that's how you control a platformer object without the player being to control it. And you can use these for even more advanced AI because they'll actually have gravity. They'll actually have their own physics. And that's why I'm going to just tell you that by words because you can do that yourself. It's very self-explanatory. But all you have to do is simulate the keys with the timers that we just used. And with that, that is how you make enemy AI in Gdevelop. Remember to play around, experiment with the timers. You can practically make any type of AI you want with this, from simple all the way to boss fights with these types of code. And with that, thank you for watching this tutorial. Hope you like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And also come back each and every week for more great Gdevelop content like this. Thank you for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.